Hi guys, this is the third in a series of videos looking at the functions we're proposing for the new ABF technology. In this video I'm going to look at how tournament organisers can manage a congress, specifically looking at entries and payments. In the last video we focused on the other aspects of a congress, but we didn't really look at entries and payments, so we're going to pick that one up here. So we'll start by just going back to the home page that a convener will be looking at. Last time we looked at how you configure up a congress to set up the web page and everything, and how you manage certain aspects of it. So here we'll now start looking at the more detailed area of the entries and the financials and stuff like that. So you see we've got a summary of events on the front here, and we've got a listing of how much money is due and how much is being paid. One bit of feedback we had earlier was previously it just shows entries, but that's not that useful when it's a mixture of teams and pairs events, so now we've got this column with showing actual tables. Should be more useful. This is the convener's view. If I just click across, the players would get a similar view, but all they'll see, they won't see the financial stuff at the end, they'll just see the list of events. So let's go in and have a look. If we look at, let's say, the pairs first, if they want to have a look at this one, this again when we start is the listing of pairs that have entered this event. This is the view that a player would see, but a convener is going to see a bit more. So here at the moment we've got just the total amount of money due, how much has been paid and how much is still owing. If I expand this though, as a convener I've got these blue areas that I can also see. That gives me firstly a bit more detail about how that total was arrived at, the discounts and everything, and split out between the different ones. I've also got a column here for refunded. That becomes relevant if you have entries that have been withdrawn. And let's just open up that area. So at the moment, if an entry withdraws, it creates a bit of a problem, particularly if they've already paid, because it just sort of disappears from the current system, and that makes tying up the financial reconciliation at the end pretty messy. So what the proposal is here is that where that's happened and an entry has already been paid, but then for whatever reason they have to withdraw, it's going to be moved into this area. So that won't be visible to the players, but it will be visible to the convener, and it'll take into account money that's already been paid and any amounts we've paid back, and we'll see that a bit later in some of the reports. It just makes the tracking the money a bit easier. One other thing I will have available to me as the convener on this screen is, just like now, I can edit any of the entries, I can add new entries, but other things that we're proposing that you're going to be able to do, and this isn't mocked up in this spreadsheet, but what we're proposing is you're going to be able to select a combination of entries, and you'll be able to do a few other things that you can't currently do. One of them is going to be to merge two entries. So you might have, in a teams situation, two entries that have got two players each, and you want to merge them into a single entry. You can't currently do that. You have to manually move one or delete one and add the other players. So you'll be able to merge entries. You'll also be able to move entries from one event to another. It's fairly common that somebody perhaps intended to enter the seniors, but they've accidentally entered the open or something like that. So again, at the moment to do that, you have to just delete the entry from one and manually add it to the other. Here you'll be able to select it and actually move it to another entry, to another event. So there's a few extra things that you'll be able to do as a convener on here. If we just go back to the main lists, if we look at now, if you wanted to actually enter the event, so let's go back to the teams this time. So if we enter the event, this takes us back to an entry screen that, if you watched the previous video, I went through in a little bit more detail about this screen and how you actually enter an event. So if we look on here, that's the player's view, but once again, as a convener, I'm going to have some more things that I can do. There's also this section down the bottom, financial summary and list of payments, that we talked about before. So one important thing that as a convener I can do, if you recall before we talked about payments that are still pending. In this context, somebody's said they're going to pay by bank transfer, but the money hasn't actually turned up yet. So as a convener, I'm going to have the option here of saying, yes, it has arrived, I confirm that's come in, and now that payment comes through fully paid and complete. I'll be able to do that somewhere else as well, we'll see that in a moment, but that's some extra stuff that the convener can do. You'll notice there's also some other stuff here. One thing that is different in this system to what's currently in operation is that right now you can amend the amount of money you pay. The system just asks you for an amount, but you can actually edit that. We're not proposing to allow that here because it can cause havoc with reconciling the numbers afterwards, but the convener is going to have the option here of just effectively fudging any number they want. So if they want to give an extra discount or make an adjustment for whatever reason, they're going to be able to do that. Let's say in this example, player 4 is due to pay 150. For whatever reason, we're going to give them another discount. We're going to give them 50 bucks off. I can just put in 50 as the convener. It'll treat it as another discount and it'll reduce the amount they owe. If we look down in the financial summary to the left here, we now see that coming through here as an additional item, and that'll show up in the financial reconciliation at the end as well. So I've got the power as a convener to just update the numbers for whatever reason. This area here, clear warnings, that's probably not going to be relevant when we first issue this, but we are looking at doing some validation on entries as to whether players are sort of non-financial, so they're not inactive in the AVF scheme. We can potentially look at validating how many master points somebody's got as to whether they're eligible to enter perhaps a restricted event that they've tried to enter. Likewise, age for a youth or seniors event. There's all sorts of things that we could validate. We're not proposing to do much in the first version of this. We just don't have enough information associated with the players yet either. But that's something that may well come in the future, and the convener will then just have the ability to override and accept those warnings if they wish to. So that's what that area is doing. If we go back from there to our front screen as the convener, I said before we can look at doing some of this elsewhere. You notice in here under the manage area there's this incoming entries and payments. If I click on that, this takes me to an area very similar to what exists at the moment. It's now been split into three parts. So the first part is new entries, very similar to what is in Peter Bush's existing system. You can show all of them or you can just show the new ones. So an incoming new entry is listed there, and as the convener I can accept it or delete it. I can also go and have a look at it if I want to, and take me back to here. Likewise, these offline payments, the bank transfers, we saw before that you could confirm on the entry screen that bank transfers have arrived. That's probably going to be a bit of a nuisance in practice, going down to each individual entry screen. So this is going to be an area where you've got a single incoming list of them all, where anyone says they're going to do that, so you can just confirm them on here instead of having to go down to the detail screen if you don't wish to do that. So that's a little bit about how we might manage the entries and payments coming in. If we look now at some of the reports, the financial summary is probably the key one here. So that one is now listing by each event in our Congress a full summary of all the amounts we might expect to have had come in, so taking into account the full rate, then all the different discounts. That $50 adjustment we gave is now showing up there. So it says how much income are we expecting. Then it comes across here and looks at, well, what have we actually had through the door so far? What have we received? What have we repaid? What is still pending? So, for example, bank transfers people have said they're going to pay, but they haven't done so yet. And what's still outstanding? And of course, that should come to the same amount as this. And if there's a difference, that will show up here. We are looking at a further summary for each individual event, just showing that in a bit more detail. So This is, for example, the pairs one. It's showing all the incoming amounts, then what we've actually received, how we've received it, the different payment methods people have used, and what's still owing, and any difference at the end. I realise the colour scheme on this is pretty hideous. We'll probably amend that in due course, but this is the sort of idea we're looking at to give the convener a bit more detail about how the money's worked out for these things. If we just go back to that top level summary, there's also other things that we can look at, some other reports here. Unpaid entries is quite a useful one. So that's just a summary of all the entries that haven't yet been fully paid. Either there's amounts still pending or people just haven't paid at all yet. And you'll be able to view that either by the event or by player. And we'll probably have some filters on here so you can pick and choose exactly what you want to see. I haven't mocked all that up. It'll look a bit different in the internet environment to what it does in Excel here. But the idea is that you'll be able to see all the amounts that are still missing, which events they relate to, and more importantly, which players they relate to, so you know who to go chasing up if you need to. Another overall report we're going to have is just a list of all the payment records. So this is all the payments that have come in across all the events and all the players and all the different methods. So on its own, this would be pretty enormous for some of the big events, but there'll be the ability to filter this so you can look at it for a particular event or search for a particular player or particular payment method. So once again, I haven't mocked all of this up here, but this will be viewable in all sorts of different ways. And you'll see back here on all these different reports, some of the other ones here, player frequencies, duplications, things like that. These are ones that are in Peter Bush's current software. I haven't mocked them all up yet. I'm not actually sure how many of these are really used. I'm keen to get some feedback from some of the tournament organisers to which ones of these you do need. I'm not going to build them all if no one uses them, obviously, but we need to sort out, well, what reports do you want to see? Another one down the end here that we are intending to add, this isn't available currently, at least not in the ABF system. The intent here is that you'll be able to compare entries from any two events you want. So it'll show you who's entered in both of the events, who's entered in one but not the other, and give you a listing of all of that. A common usage for that might well be look at the equivalent event last year, who entered it then, compare it with the current entries for the event this year, and that might show up a listing of people that were entered last year that haven't yet entered this year, so you could go and target them if you want to try and get them to enter again this year. So it's quite useful for that sort of stuff. So again, I haven't mocked it up here yet, but the idea is that you'll be able to compare any two events in the system and see who's entered which ones. So that's a brief summary of what some of the key reports are going to be, how you manage entries. There's a lot of detail behind this. It actually gets quite messy when you start looking at all the different things that can happen, particularly when you've got all these discounts floating around. So there's quite a lot of calculations behind this. Hopefully that's going to be largely invisible, certainly to the players and hopefully to you as well. But if you do have queries on this or you're concerned by something you've seen here, by all means let me know. But otherwise, that's a brief overview of, as from the convener's point of view, how you'd look after entries and payments and some of the reports that will be available to you to help you tie up the money at the end of these tournaments in future. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks, guys.